beneficial that you need to push that way, and also show them like the value of products, right? Instead of buying the brand new Jordans that they wear 2 times ever, you know, showing them that buying a cheaper pair, it could be like an 8 series, and not like a cheap one, but like a nice pair of shoes that will last months and gets the value out of it.
Exactly.
And understand that you're paying something and you're getting a return on it. That's not necessarily a value return, but just life return.
Yeah. Well, you know, like I guess I look at it like, you know, at our age, like if I could go back and do things over, I would have been looking into all the topics that we're talking about now. I would be trying to understand them. And I get it. Like when you're 18 years old or
you're not thinking about it.
It's boring. A Roth IRA is boring because
I got to save money and I can't spend and buy stuff.
50 years from now, that's boring. But the dividends that it would have paid me had I started aggressively investing at 18, would have been wild.
I agree. Even when just being younger at 15, 16 with the parents' approvals on accounts, right? Because they could still get accounts. You just have to have a guardian sign on some of these things.
There's just so many things that you could do that, you know, most people didn't. But why don't you make it start with you? Like, why not start now? Because then you change future generations of your family by doing this. And it's just crazy what the compounding interest can do when you actually take the time to learn about it and invest.
Compounding interest, investing the market, because it's like that time frame, if you lose money in the market, it doesn't hurt you as much, right? You're not losing $100,000 because of the market. You're losing 50 bucks. You know, you're not losing a lot. So you're understanding like what to pay attention to and what not to. So when you get to the age where you actually are investing more money, you kind of already have that knowledge in the back of your head of like how I should be safe versus how I should be aggressive.
Yeah. And, you know, I guess like, you know, I've got so many friends who have kids now and they ask me all the time what they need to be doing and like, how do we get out of this hole? How do we do this? And, you know, there's so many tools out there for people to use now with social media and, you know, the AI and the internet to build plans for yourself.
You gotta be careful with the AI.
You do. But I'm saying right now, the information is more accessible than it's ever been.
It will give you the articles. It will give you where to find the information, to read actual information to understand how it works. Yeah. But I would suggest never to be like, hey, ChatGPT or Grok, how do I need to invest my money? I have a $5,000. Who should I invest it into? Yeah. Because unfortunately, a lot of that AI is at least 30 days behind. At times where it's like the information it gives you is so far-fetched behind that by the time you're looking at it, it's not going to benefit you. It's actually probably going to hurt you more than anything.
Really? I didn't know that.
So it's like, and there's some, it is changing. Some of it has gotten better, right? Yeah. But there's no reality that when you ask Grok a question that it knows to check today's stuff, right? It's always going to look backlogs of everything, find what matches what you're requesting the most, and give it back. Yeah. So it could be an investment that somebody did a year ago. Yeah. And unless you look at the article itself, because at least it references and tells you where it got the information. If you don't look where that came from, it could ruin you and lose money. Yeah. Right. So you just always want to be very careful.
You always have to use due diligence. And it's like, you know, I think about this too, and like we'll do a little topic swap here, but like college. Oh my gosh. The amount of people that I know that went to college, took out this massive loan, but they are now paying $300, $400, $500, $600, $700 a month back in those loans, and they're not using the degree.
I think that's so common today because, like, for me, I have a degree in criminal justice technology. Yeah, I studied ethical hacking and basically digital forensics. Mm-hmm. Have I done anything with that in years? No. Yeah, I haven't touched that. Right now, I played a game of how to get my degree cheaper. So I went to community college for 2 years.
Great option.
Paid a lot, paid significantly less for it.
Oh, yeah.
And then transferred to UNCC, which, you know, like nice thing about North Carolina is we probably have the best in-state tuition. Yeah. Where it is not extraordinarily expensive to go to it. So it's like, I understand people want to go to these like fancy colleges. Yeah. And sometimes, you know, they give programs that are better than other colleges.
Oh, yeah.
For sure.
There's definitely options to go to college that make it affordable.
But at the end of the day, it's a piece of paper, right? Yeah. So it's like if I'm looking and I'm hiring somebody and I'm looking at a paper, I see you have your bachelor's degree and I see this person has a bachelor's degree. He has his from UNCC. This guy has his from Duke. They're the same thing to me, right? Now, if it's medical fields, there's certain fields that are definitely colleges play a dramatic thing into it, right?
My best friend Max, he, he's an anesthesiologist now. Like, obviously for him, that's important. I was talking to him. His student loan payment is like $5,500 a month. It's insane. But he's an anesthesiologist, so he's making the money to pay for it. So it's not for him. It's not a big deal.
As long as you're able to like
pay it off in 2 years.
As long as you're kind of some cent doing that, great. But you should always take advantage of whatever you have available. In-state tuition is a huge one because out of state's insane across anywhere, right?
So and I think more people are coming around to this idea that college may not be as necessary as we once thought it was. I think it's one of those things where it was kind of just ingrained in our brain. You had to go to college to do anything.
That paper is very important.
Our generation will probably not value it as much as the previous generations. I think when, we are hiring people one day, for the ones of us that go out and create our own businesses, I don't think it's going to be as important as it once was. I think it really is just going to come down to your merit and in your, what you bring to the table.
And I think there is value. You do learn some skills in it that I think you need to do. The social
skills and all kinds of stuff.
So especially what we know is kind of ties into what we're talking about, right? Investing in your kid's future, right? So some of that money, it's easily just paying their college, right? Yeah. Make it so they don't have that debt. And then give them a go for the degree that actually helps them a lot, right? Not that very niche degree. And granted, if they want to, don't ever say you don't follow your dreams, right? But always just try to help a little bit and be like, hey, instead of going to your French degree, let's look at a business degree, right? Like, there's some things you can get a minor in French, right? So you still meet what you want. But like that business one is going to help you so much more in general, especially with nowadays where job market's crazy. Having a generalized style will help you get to where you want to be.
But you have to understand the opportunity cost of doing that. So like if for me, the opportunity cost was $80,000. That's what it cost me to go to college. That's what my student loans were for. And I've paid them off. And I'm very thankful about that. I've done very well at my age. So I'm thankful I got them paid off. But what did that $80,000 really get me?
Yeah.
Well, for me, some of the closest friends I will ever have in my entire life. Memories that I will hold forever that are more important to me than money could ever matter.
Yeah.
For me, it was worth it. Truly worth it. But I think for a lot of people, $80,000 right when you're getting started,
it's a lot.
It's a lot.
It's a lot of money.
It sucks because they will approve you for that loan
instantly,
like that.
But don't worry, you want to go pay it back for 8 years.
Yeah, but you want to go buy a house or any of these other things, and it's tough. Like it's very, very tough, and you have to really weigh those options before you do it. Because I think, and even for your kids, explain to them like if you have, I know a lot of people they will not pay for their kids' college.
Yes,
that you shouldn't have to. If you want to, great. If
my parents wanted to,
awesome.
And I made the decision when I was going. They paid for, I think, my first year of community college, and I felt so bad for that. And it hurt me more to know that my parents are sacrificing stuff that they can't do, and they can't afford. They want to go travel, they can't do it, and I hated that. Yeah. So I made it my goal that I got my full-time job, that I was putting away as much as I could. Yeah. So I constantly was able to afford my own college going through.
You don't sacrifice your future so your kids can go to college.
Correct.
Like, listen, I'm not saying don't help them.
Correct.
Because you should, but definitely don't go in there and sacrifice. They're already calling in for the show. Look at that. No, but
I muted the thing and it didn't even want to mute.
But don't sacrifice your future because you want to make sure your kids can go off to college because they may not want to go off. And there's a lot of these plans, the 529s and all these other plans you can set up for your kids that will help them afford college and all this stuff. But then you got to be careful because if they don't want to go to college, you might have just wasted that money.
But you also, that's what's the benefit, like the custodial accounts, right? So it's like in the beginning, you can easily just, when they're very young, start investing money into it. And then if they go, I don't want to go to college, they still have this fund to help them get to where they want to get to, right?
Make sure whatever you're investing in for them, they have options where they're not locked into it just paying for one thing.
Yes.
It
just creates availability.
That do that. So you have to be careful.
Pay attention to what you want. And it's like if your kid, you're going to push your kid to go to college, then sure. But if you want your kid to have the ability to do whatever they want to do and you want to support them, make sure you do an account that has that capability, right? And make sure they understand when they get that money to not just go spend it on whatever, right? You want to make sure you teach them in those cases because you give a kid 100,000 or 21,000, they could go run to spend a lot of that real quick.
Yeah, it's really tough for kids kids getting inheritances now. They have to spend, if they get the IRA, they got to spend it within 10 years and there's all these rules.
Yeah.
But good Lord, like if somebody gave me $100,000 when I was 19 years old, it would have been gone immediately.
Yes.
And that's just somebody who was already starting to learn these principles because of my family being in the industry. But it's just discipline is so important.
I agree. So let's go through some questions.
Yeah.
And see what we can come up with some answers, because some of these can be interesting.
Yeah.
So I'm going to start with the one we kind of started in the beginning of this whole conversation, in the beginning of our podcast here. If you're 30 years old who feels behind, what is the fastest and most realistic path to catch up without burning out?
I think it just depends on where you're at in life, first of all, but probably the fastest way is learning what's coming in and what's going out and where it's going. That you have to understand that concept first. If you want to get to where you want to be, you got to understand where you're currently at. And if you make, let's just say $5,000 a month, $65,000 a year, whatever the number is, and you are spending more than you're making, well, where's it going?
Yeah. If you're making that much and you feel like you're not saving any money, there's a bigger problem you need to find out first, because you're spending a lot, whether you're going out every night, you're spending, you're not paying attention to whatever budgeting, whatever apps are paying, etc. Right.
I think the first step is budgeting. It's figure that out. Download one of those apps, start figuring out where your money's going. Where can I cut? Where can I find some money to put away? Do I need to pick a second job? Do I need to consider getting a roommate? You can't know any of those questions until you understand what's coming in.
And sometimes that second job is you take it for a short term of, I need to pay this credit card off.
Yeah.
I owe $3,000 to this group and I need to be able to pay this off. Take a part-time job that's overnight, like a late night thing for a couple of days a week, right? And just take that money, put it into that, pay that off, because that's going to save you a decent amount of money on its own, right?
100%. So, well, give me another one. What do we got?
So let's do this one. Interest rates are heading lower this year, so things have been slowly declining, which has been nice. Should listeners lock in today's yields on cash, refinance debt, or shift more into the market? What is the greatest move you can do currently to help save more money and make more money?
Well, again, it depends on where you're at in life. If you have a home already and you have a high interest rate and you can save a point on your interest rate, like refinance it, get that rate.
As long as it's a good return, right?
Yeah.
You don't want just a 0.5% change, right?
You'd be surprised, man. It can make a big difference. I'm not saying you should do that, but I did my first refi during COVID, and I got my rate down to like a 2.9 or something, 2.8, and it was like a 3.8 or something before. Like, it was a big drop in payment. It was a couple $100 a month that it dropped my payment.
Now, the one thing you do need to make sure you're tracking that is closing costs. Yeah. Right, because when you refinance, you always got to pay that.
I got very lucky with the refi that I did. Most of the closing costs were actually covered, so I had very, very low closing costs on that thing. They were running a little promo or whatever it was, and it helped me out dramatically. Made it to where it would actually make sense to do it.
If you're refinancing, and from my understanding, if you're refinancing, you're getting a percentage lower. That's great, right? But if your closing costs are like 15,000, right, and the amount of time it takes you to return that money is greater than like a few years, is it really worth it at that point, right?
You really need to look at how much that 0.5 is going to save you in interest over the term of your loan. If you're planning on staying in that house for the full term, if that's going to be your forever home, which there's a lot of people during COVID especially who bought these homes, they got a crazy low rate, and they're a forced landlord now. You can't. Yes, you can sell the home, but you don't want to. You don't want to get rid of that 2.25%, that 2.9% interest rate. That's just too nice.
So I'm going to ask you a controversial one that people come through on here. I'm going to read it, and then we'll go from there. Is home ownership still realistic for 30 years olds, or has the dream of building equity through real estate officially slipped away from this generation?
It's tougher now than it's ever been. There's no question about that. That even the cheap homes are crazy expensive. I did a few weeks ago see a little bit of a light at the end of the tunnel. I was talking to a home builder. They're one of the bigger ones here in Charlotte, True Homes. I think they're probably all over the Carolinas now. but they're probably one of the biggest. They build these like, semi-affordable like starter homes.
Yeah.
Out where I live, they're, $225,000 starting price near the lake, which is crazy, but they won't be that way for long. But most of those homes are like 350, and I was just chit-chatting with them because I'm trying to understand that market more where I live. And they were offering this promotion where the first like 12 months in the home, the interest rate was like 2.99. Second year, it was 3.99.
When the flex,
and then years 3 to 30, it was like
you want to always pay attention.
5.99.
The fixed ones is what you want.
Well, yeah, agreed. But that was amazing.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, dude. Because I mean, listen, your first 12 months, like you've just saved this big down payment. Let's just say it's 20%, like what you're supposed to do. Now, there's ways to do it. You can get away with 3.5%.
Yeah.
Like,
depending on the type of loans.
You have all these ways to get into these homes. But they essentially, I was talking to them and it was affordable. Like it was $12,000 would have been the down payment you needed on this home to get into it at the lowest possible cost, a couple grand in closing costs, but because you're buying for the builder, they have a lot of subsidies and stuff like that to help with the closing costs. So I'm not saying $12,000 isn't a lot of money.
Yeah.
But to get a brand new home, 12 grand was not that bad. And so this was a 3-bedroom, nice home, 2.99 for the first year. I think at 5.99, the actual like mortgage was going to be like $2,200 a month, which again, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
But like, what are you renting South End for that?
So that's good. That's a good push to me because I'm the opposite on this. I feel renting is the more viable option.
Yeah.
Like particularly just for like younger generation. Now, granted, if you get a family, sure, right? You want to have a house for your kids.
Well, see, we're talking about 30-year-olds, so I'm assuming most 30-year-olds already have a kid. So it's like, or want them.
But for living in like South End or Charlotte, like in the city, right? You're spending, unless you're going like high penthouses and stuff, crazy. Yeah. But like for me, I live in Loso here, and I'm paying $1,800, which granted is still a lot in comparison to anything that's in the outskirts, right? But when I had my house before I sold it, I was paying about $1,400. That's with the insurance, all your stuff for taxes and stuff, which the whole property tax fluctuation can screw you in Charlotte currently with how much it's going up. Insane. It's crazy. So I'm only spending technically $400 more. But what that's not including is all the other stuff I had to do with the house, right? Lawn care, having to, anything breaks, any updates, any changes, all these things, it just adds up so much into it. It does. And so having an apartment where I don't pay any of that, all that's done for me, right? I pay them $1,800 every month, and that handles everything. Yeah. And so like there's the benefit of that, and then I can take that extra money that it has. So like that house, I can take the extra $400 from that, and I can be investing that and moving it into other stuff. You
totally can. Yeah.
And then I can get that into a spot where if I go to get a house later when I have kids and stuff, I can pretty much almost outright purchase the house or put such a significant down payment on it that your monthly is so low. Yeah.
Well, and like back to the example I was given, like, I look at this as it's a new home. So realistically, everything's under warranty. If it breaks, it's still going to be, fixable by the company. Yeah. But, it gets you in, and, not every area is like this. The same home that is, in the area I'm talking about, if it were in Waxhaw, North Carolina, which is, a nice little suburb, would be double. Yeah. It just would. It'd be $600,000. Yeah. But what's cool about that, in some of these areas, like where I'm, where I currently live, you could buy a very nice home for half of what you could buy over here. Or, more than half. And what's great, or less than half. And what's great about that is you can go in there and get one of these promo rates from one of these new home builders like I'm talking about. And they don't always exist. This was just a one-off thing. They had a few homes left. They wanted to move them. That's how they did it. But you can get into a home, have a place to raise your family, et cetera, and start building equity in that home. Because, when you rent, and like I said, there's just two sides to this coin. One is not better than the other. Yes. But that $1,800 that you spend, it's just gone.
I think it's personal preferences, right?
It totally is.
You can just don't screw yourself buying something you can't afford, right? 100%. That's the biggest component out of that. 100%. I think we have time for one more question real quick. I think the last question I want to hit, and this one's going to be a little bit interesting. It's currently, I guess people consider this financial literacy month of April, right? Where a lot of things, everyone's learning new stuff. The new laws are coming into effect. Beyond the basics, what is one under the radar habit or account type that can dramatically improve your family's long-term wealth.
Yeah.
Like what should they invest in? What should they put money into? Should it be a Roth? Should it be high yield savings? Yeah. Should they be investing in gold and silver? Should they be investing in crypto? What's that thing that not many people are talking about that they should do?
Yeah. I think to start, what we talked about before, where are you at? Where is the money? Where is it going? Understand those two things first. Once you figure that out, what do we have left to actually invest? What do we need to cut so I have more to invest? Figure out what is the number that I need that I'll be comfortable in retirement. I could make an argument that, most people will spend more when they retire than they would currently. Because, right now, like I work. I don't have time to do the things I want to do. Like I go to Europe once a year. I want to go to Europe more than that. I'd like to go, instead of spending 2 weeks, I'd like to spend a whole month there. That's going to raise my cost of going dramatically. So I can make an argument that you're going to spend more when you retire because you're going to have more time to do the things you actually want to do. So what is that number that you need to get? So once you figure that out, then you need to start figuring out, okay, well, how do I get to that number? And, that comes down to how much you're putting away. So,
so you're saying that
Roth out.
That target should be a money value,
not
necessarily what all these different items are out there currently, but like you set a target, set a goal. Say, I want 500,000. How do I need to make that happen?
Yeah. I think you have to have realistic goals. 500,000 is,
it's a lot.
That's a lot of money. I mean, there are doctors that will not be spending 500,000 in retirement. There are people that make that now, but that's a very tough number, because you have to think most people's retirements are in 401s, they're in brokerage accounts, they're in IRAs, they're in all these things that are still taxable. And, taxes is a huge thing to think about when you retire.
I also see
it out now.
I also see a lot of people, even out with not even just retirement, setting targets to say, I want to have this much in 2 years, right? Yeah. And there's a lot of little tricks and nannies that people are doing nowadays, where it's like, I've seen this trend that's been going on lately where there's like a chart that says every day I need to put some type of value in this box, right? It's like $20, $100, $30, $5, right? And you're constantly marking that down, and by the time it's done, that's 10,000 that's in this box. Now it's $10,000 cash in a box, which is concerning to me in its own ways. But
listen, I've seen it all. I've seen people like Dave Ramsey talks about it, like, you need to put your credit cards in a plastic bag, fill it with water, throw it in the freezer, and you only break it out if it's an absolute emergency. And I think all of those tools are great. Yes. I don't think you should put your money in a box, personally. Like, I think if you went to my grandpa's old farm,
I think you can make that,
walk around and find, he used to bury jars in the ground full of cash. And I'm pretty sure if we went out there today, we'd still find a couple.
I think you can make that more in a spot where it's like, instead of putting it in a box, create a high yield savings.
Yeah, exactly.
And go $20 today going to this. Yeah. $100 going to this.
Get a credit card that gives cash back, that puts it in there for you. Like you talked about.
There's a lot of ways to make it happen.
Your points.
But end of the day, it is setting a target and saying, that is what I want, right? I want to be here. And then disciplining yourself to make that. So that means paying attention to how much you're spending, going, okay, I'm going out to the bar every day and I'm spending X amount of money. Maybe I should just do this once a week, right? Go out and have fun. Hey guys, either guys come to my house, we can have a couple glasses of wine and chill, or I'll meet you out there on Friday or Saturday. Right?
Just do what I did. Move to the middle of nowhere where there's literally nothing to do other than in the summertime, and you won't spend any money.
Yeah. But it seems we're pretty much at our point of time here. It looks like we're got to wrap this show up. I appreciate you hopping on here with me. It's been a great conversation. If anyone has any questions, leave it in the comments below. We would love to hear and try to figure out your answers, or if you disagree with us, so we can have those conversations and see where we're at.
Awesome.
Other than that, I appreciate it. I'll catch you all later. Bye.
Thank you, guys.